Or probably not. Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the May 15th regular, actually special council meeting for the city of Courtenay. I'd like to just start by acknowledging that we are meeting on the unceded territory of the Comox First Nation, the traditional keepers of our land. Also like to just mention for those that may have arrived to think that we may be discussing Braidwood this evening, that is not on the agenda. So with that, we will move into our one and only item, which is prioritization of community policing services. And I think I'll pass it over to our city manager, Jeff Garbutt. And we will start the discussion. And then once we've had a fulsome discussion at the end, we'll start talking about motions and that kind of thing. So over to you, Jeff.
Thank you through the mayor to council. Today we have joining us our acting detachment commander, Corey Kilborn, and Staff Sergeant Troy Beauregard. Council has met with the RCMP at various times to talk about priorities in the community and setting our 2024-2025 priorities. There was a request to meet, and we're really grateful for our colleagues to be here today. We have provided information on the previous community priorities, and I believe our RCMP colleagues have some discussion items and looking for some feedback through council. So that's all from our staff side, and I think we can turn that over to Corey.
All right, and if you push the button there, I will get your microphone fired up, and you should be good to go now. There we go. Oh, yeah, just push. Yeah, when it's blinking green, it's ready, and you don't have to turn it off again. You're kind of one of the main shows, and if you want to get your microphone warmed up, all right, there we go. Okay, over to you.
Yeah, thank you. We submitted our list, and those, of course, are from every community that we serve, and so they're quite a long list, and we're looking to harmonize our priorities among the communities because there's a lot of overlap in between. And so what we then do once council here sets their 5 priorities, we would then harmonize those with the other communities and then conduct activities under each priority that targets each community's specific concerns. And that's how we would go at it this year, I think, is our plan.
Excellent, excellent. And I think going forward, there's a lot of interest between the leaders in the various communities across the Comox Valley to actually have sort of a session where the RCMP can come and talk to all the elected officials at the same time to kind of get our heads all wrapped around things. And I think to your point, to look at if there's ways for harmonizing or unifying some things, and then and maybe there's things that might be different in different jurisdictions, but that we're even aware of those kinds of things, because right now we're all siloed out quite a bit. So I really appreciate your thoughts on that. All right.
Yeah, thank you.
And did you have any more comments on the list here at all in terms of, so would this just be kind of the list that's mainly used within the Comox Valley, or is this kind of further broad than that?
Well, I think it's these are all concerns that are brought up specifically by the communities in the Comox Valley that we serve. I can provide some context. Just statistically, the problem areas that we're seeing that we've been reporting on are, the road safety, the crime reduction, and property crime is another big area of concern, I think, in every community. And of course, the drug trafficking and but ultimately it comes down to what each community wants to choose, because I think some communities, even though statistically it might not be significant in their neighborhood, it's still a concern for council. So we identify priorities that way as well.
Okay, excellent. And yeah, and I know I think the city of Courtenay has often added or changed the list, but I think we've often added that intimate partner violence to the list as well. While I've been chatting, some lights have come on, so I'm going to pass it over to Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks to both of you for doing this today. I just want to start out by acknowledging that I think it's a tough time to be in policing. There's a lot of issues that society is grappling with that aren't as clear cut as they might have been in bygone eras. We've gone back and forth on drug decriminalization, just as one example. And we also have probably a reluctance to see people go through the court system, reluctance by the court system itself. So I know that there's a lot of demands on your members to do more than perhaps they're able to do, given the circumstances that you work in. So, and I also know that recruitment and retention continue to be issues, as well as the future of the RCMP's involvement in municipal policing. I think it's 2032 when that is up for re-examination, and we know what's going on in Surrey. And I read today that Grand Prairie, of all places, has developed its own municipal police force. So, so lots of changes taking place in how we exercise police authority. But of course, what your members do remains crucially important to us, and I want you to know how much I value the service that your people give.
Yep, thank you very much.
Yeah. As far as this list, I mean, my tendency would be to group a whole bunch of them together. But I did want to ask the number 16, which talks about downtown police presence. Is my understanding that we've already agreed that there will be the patrol that took place in previous years, that's going to take place again? Is that right?
Correct. It's ongoing now. It actually started about a month earlier than we did it last year.
Yeah. So, so what I wanted to ask about, we've had a number of representations from businesses over this past while. And we met with one business in particular a while ago that was having all sorts of challenges. They're basically a fast food ice cream place downtown that the only place that's really lit up at night. They see themselves as a bit of a lighthouse, and as a result, they attract all sorts of people. And they've also attracted a fair amount of trouble in terms of assaults of staff, thefts, racism towards their staff, things like that. And I'm just wondering what the capacity is of the RCMP when there is a business like that, particularly open in the evening, which is perhaps a more vulnerable time, to put a particular focus on that location and support those people with the issues that they're struggling with.
Yeah, I think I know the location in question, and I've been there at night and seen what you're talking about. In talking with our bike squad, it's an area that's a bit of a challenge because there's vehicles that people are living in nearby. Plus its proximity to the pathway, I think, makes it a thoroughfare for people, and then they loiter there. And so the capacity for us is I would encourage that business to keep calling us when those things happen, and we will come and deal with them in the moment and pursue charges where we are able to. And then I've already informed the membership to conduct extra patrols there and be alive to the fact that this seems to be an area where people are loitering and there's problematic behavior. So that's sort of already been done, but it does seem to be a sore point there.
Yeah, the other thing I wanted to ask in relation to that, we have a category of crimes called hate crimes. And I know they're difficult to prove and establish and get convictions on, but I wondered what sort of, whether you're getting those types of reports, establishments like that, which have a number of foreign students who work there, and insults that come to them either online or in person. And I don't know to what extent they're getting reported to you, but I'm just wondering what capacity there is to call that behavior out with a police response.
High capacity. We would act on it if we had the information. So again, I would encourage people, if they have a complaint of that nature, to call, provide a good statement and have evidence that we can pursue, and we'll definitely pursue it as a hate crime. I have not heard, Troy, have you heard any incidents? Yeah, that would come, like, I think that would be highlighted to us pretty easily, but yeah, we haven't heard any complaints. So if that's happening, then tell the people to complain.
And
Those sorts of offenses, we also have the study flags for them. So it's a flags out file in particular. And to categorize it as that is difficult.
Yeah. Maybe one of the other things that you can do, and this will be my last comment for now, is where there is that sort of an issue taking place. I know that you have members who would go there and speak to those people about what their recourse might be and how they might go about reporting and what type of response they could receive. I'm assuming that that's still that type of preventative policing and support for people who might get victimized is still available.
Yes, it is.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks very much.
Excellent so much. And I should have mentioned this earlier, but if you talk a little bit closer to the microphone, it'll just pick up your voice a little bit more. We can hear you good here, but we do have Councillor Cole Hamilton online, and I'm sure thousands and maybe even millions of people watching our council meeting this evening. So with that, Councillor McCollum.
Thank you, Mayor, and thanks for joining us today. I think it's really helpful for us to have a conversation around this once a year, and I think it was really useful last year, and yeah, I appreciate the session to do it today. Looking at this list from last year and just thinking about this exercise in choosing priorities for the city specifically, I'm not clear on where we should focus in our council role in providing this feedback. Just looking at some of this list, it seems as though some of these things are reactive in nature. And, if you get a call around, domestic violence, for example, or a sexual assault, that whether or not it's listed in our priorities, I would assume that the response would be exactly the same. Am I correct in assuming that?
Yes, it would. And so there are some priorities that we have an ability to impact proactively. So for sexual assault or a domestic violence situation, we do have the ability to affect our ability to investigate. And so I think that would be an activity, if that's a priority for the community. We would develop a more robust investigative strategy or help train our members so they can better respond to those offenses, that kind of thing. But yeah, you're right. It's after the fact.
So getting into the meat and potatoes of strategic planning, this is a bit of a misnomer about the priorities, right? So our priorities probably should be 5 or 6 maximum for the community. Otherwise, you're herding cats, right? And under each priority, then we would have a certain measure. So what are we trying to address under that priority? What are we trying to accomplish? Should be something measurable, something attainable. And then underneath that, we will have initiatives that will help us reach that. So for example, your question about violence in relationships, well, it might be that we will host what we call ICAT meetings, where we'll be the host of ICATs. So that's Intensive Community Assessment Team. So if I get the acronym wrong, where our DVU, so our Special Victims Unit, hosts these with other community agencies on potential high risk and try to prevent any reoccurrence, right? So maybe we'll host a certain number of those, or we'll identify a certain number of those. So while the violence relationship might not, it'll be public safety, and the violence relationship might fall under that as a priority. So we're going to try and group those a little bit better to streamline the process. Whereas we'll have 5 or 6 priorities, and then the initiatives to meet our goals will change. Those will be more specific to each of the priorities. Does that make sense?
It does, actually. That's the helpful context. And I guess in response to that, I would ask if, if there's trends or changes that, that are being observed that would, be helpful to flag and bring to this conversation. Because for like myself as a decision maker, these things that to me appear to be more like a reactive response, without knowing if there's a change or, perhaps an opportunity to address it better, I wouldn't necessarily pick that in my 5 priorities, but maybe there's information that you have that would, change my thinking on one of those. Because some of these really stand out as things. It's like, yeah, they're, road safety, that's opportunity for the RCMP to be proactive and perhaps prevent, things from occurring, whether it's substance use of drivers, or I know there's the safe passing rule that's coming. So in my mind, I would flag something like that as a priority, knowing that, if you put resources into it, perhaps that there's, a more obvious impact. Yeah, so anyway, I think I'll leave it there for now and then kind of come back as this conversation goes on to maybe express what I think I'd like to put emphasis on.
Sure.
Just want to hear from other people, but thanks.
Yeah,
Thank
I can add that domestic violence is still a serious problem. So if it's a priority for council, it would be a very valid concern. And, the high risk domestic violence cases are still quite a few that are around. And we do have the ability to do some proactive work. We do media releases to highlight at really high risk times of year, like Christmas and January are really high instances of domestic violence. And so we'll have a media campaign, that kind of thing. So as to the effect it has, I don't know, but it's, we're sort of doing a part to educate people that there are services available and hopefully they can avoid that outcome.
And know what those resources that are available to them. And no, I appreciate that. And I mean, we just happen to have Moosehide campaign day tomorrow is going to be happening. And just want to appreciate the work you've done. Councillor Cole-Hamilton, I do see your hand is up. You'll be next after Councillor Warren.
Thanks, Mayor, and thanks so much for the presentation. I wanted to say that when I look back to my previous term and this term, I just see this constant improvement of so much in terms of communication and I think working alongside you folks. Hopefully you feel that as well. Like I think there's been a lot of great work done. And yeah, I see this long list and I think it's difficult to narrow it down. And I don't know if we all should just sort of put our 2 cents in at some point and see how aligned we are in our priorities. But I also see how, yeah, there's the proactive and the prevention pieces and everything else in the investigation. And it's just a ton of work and it's hard to know where to focus. And I guess I think that we could all do a better job as a community to join in those prevention efforts. So as an example, sadly, we know that sexual assaults often happen as a result of some stuff that happens out in, I don't want to target particular businesses, but when people are going out, and there could be more, I think, with the business community to keep an eye on that, or, it takes a village, right? So, I guess, there's the public perception of what's happening, and then there's the actual crime. And I actually was looking at the court list, not for myself or my family, but for something else. And I saw that there were a few, sadly, sexual offenses, and then quite a few involving alcohol. So that I thought that was interesting. And I don't know how well that court list reflects, what's going on in the community, but on that particular day, those were the issues. So I guess I see the downtown police presence as something that has been implemented, and I think it does help with the feeling of safety and perception. So I think I'll let Councillor Cole-Hamilton talk, but I think there's a difference between, what are these crimes that you're seeing maybe increase or not lowering that you want to put attention to, but then also addressing that kind of public safety perception in the community, because I think that's important as well. So I'll leave it at that for now and see what our wise Councillor Cole Hamilton has to say. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Moran. Did you have any response?
I would just note that, yeah, there are some offenses, like I highlighted, like property crime, it is decreasing in the community, but that's just the nature of the baby boomer age group, and the people at which age they commit crime is usually at a certain age, and there's less of them around. And so,
Right.
but if you look at the statistics in our area, the property crime is not decreasing at the same rate as other communities. Same thing with violent crime. And so, that's where areas that we would look to alert you folks that this is what we're seeing in terms of statistics.
Excellent. I really appreciate that. I'm gonna sort of channel a little bit of Councillor McCollum. I should have started by saying that we did agree as a council that we'd ask questions of clarification. And then once we've got those done, and then we had this special meeting. So I just wanted to remind council that that's the purpose of right now is those questions of clarification. Once we're through that, then we can get down to the meat and potatoes of the decision in front of us. So with that, Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. I just want to say I really appreciated the last few answers. I couldn't see which officer were speaking, but I found they really helped me to understand just how you see the prioritization, and just to have a bit of a peek behind this just list of 16 things. And I guess what I'm curious about is you obviously get priorities from each community, and then you sort of put them into you sort of consolidate those. And I was curious to know what the 5 top priorities were in the last year after you did that kind of synthesis, and how you felt those aligned with what you saw on the ground and the needs that were there. And my other question, and it's a really short one, is, doesn't crime reduction cover everything? Number 2, could we just put everything on number 2?
Yeah,
I just find it an odd, I find it an odd heading, but anyway, but my main question is about how the priorities stacked up last year and how you felt that fit the needs in the community.
Yeah, thank you. I think that priority you mentioned is one of the flaws, I think, in how we itemize the priorities, because you're right, the crime reduction does impact every area. And so I think we would look to identify the biggest areas within that, which would be property crime, drug trafficking, and not on this list, it would actually be violent crime. But again, the ability for us to proactively impact that might be limited, although we could certainly increase our capacity to investigate them. And then things around the, it says here bylaws, homeless encampment, but I think it's just the priorities around how we deal with the unhoused population, which also sort of encompasses the drug trafficking as well.
So are those I guess I was wondering when you put all the different priorities we all had together, out of these 16, which came up to be the top 5 things last year that you prioritize resources towards? Would you be able to sort of break it down like that?
Yeah, I think road safety, property crime, drug trafficking, the downtown police presence, if we could just umbrella around that. And
Typically, that downtown police presence would fall. We'd have a priority, something we would choose on our own as well, police visibility. And that could be included again. Underneath that, we would include that downtown presence, foot patrols, even could tie into road safety a little bit, right? Presence on the roadways. So again, we're looking to group them more succinctly, and then the initiatives that we will address, like we talk to our memberships about as well, the members on the road, the boots on the ground. How do you guys think we could tackle these specific priorities in the community? Like, what can you as an individual member, as a watch, as an attachment to meet those priorities, right? And what sort of initiatives? So, like I said, we're just trying to streamline it a little bit more and make it all just flow a bit easier. We may have some more initiatives. That's sort of the meat and potatoes. So the priorities are the overreaching things. and those initiatives are the finer details.
Yeah, and I guess the last priority, there's a few of them that which really encompass this, but it's essentially liaising with the communities and the councils. And that's for yourselves. It could mean increased communication for for the Comox First Nation. It's a reconciliation exercise, that kind of a thing. And so we design priorities around increased communication with the communities, whatever that looks like. And that'd be another important one.
Okay, thanks very much. I may have more questions later, but I appreciate the time now. Thanks.
Thanks, Councillor Cole Hamilton and Mr. Garbutt.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just to insert, council may recall that during our strategic planning exercises, we were the interaction with the RCMP and talking about the linking of the prioritization to the service delivery and performance plan for the detachment was what we wanted to enhance that communication on. And we've had a couple of sessions with the RCMP. We've been great through since our strategic plan has been adopted. So I just wanted to just remind council that also these priorities are what helps will facilitate our dialogue when the detachment responds on these priorities. And then I think that will form some more of our conversations and reporting back with the quarterly statistics, et cetera. So I just thanks for the opportunity to weigh in there.
I really appreciate that. And we have had Councillor Jolicoeur join us. And just as a reminder, we're just starting off with questions of clarification. And then once those are sorted out, then we'll move into the conversation around a motion that we'll bring forward. And so I guess my question, you know, as road safety is pretty high up on the list, probably a two-parter. So the first one is how many dedicated staff members do we have just for road safety, if that is our number one priority?
As part of our detachment, there's 1.5.
Okay, and then my subsequent, because I kind of already knew the answer for that, but the subsequent question is really, are there ways, and I think I know the answer to this as well, but there's organizations like Citizens on Patrol or COPS, which are out there and they're supported through the city as well as ICBC and auxiliary police. And I'm not sure where the auxiliary program is at this point, but just how they also maybe help complement that 1.5 full-time employee.
Yeah, and so we are looking to strengthen our relationship with the Citizens on Patrol, the Speedwatch folks, because we have it, but it's currently probably underutilized. So we'll look to enhance that. We also have the highway patrol, the provincial highway patrol out of our community. And so they police mainly the highways, but we do have communication with them regarding some of the areas that crisscross into our area. And that the auxiliary program is just recently been reinstated. And so we have no auxiliaries on strength right now. And I'm not sure what the long-term plans will be to bring more on strength because their capacities are vastly diminished in terms of being able to conduct anything related to enforcement activities.
Right. So that might be that longer term play in terms of getting that capacity back, training, et cetera.
Yep, correct.
Okay. No, I really appreciate that. And I'm looking around to see if there's any other questions for clarification. Councillor McCollum.
Actually, just to follow up on your question. So the 1.5 officers for road safety, is that for the entire community? That's not specific to City of Courtenay, it's for Comox Valley region?
It's for the entire community and but all of our members do conduct a traffic enforcement. Essentially, our person that was elected to Alexa's list for the 7th year in a row or something, he is a general duty frontline police officer. So they are conducting traffic enforcement as well, but the people that are primarily dedicated, it's the 1.5, and it's just a resource issue as we're fully tapped with call response and other activities. So that's what we have to dedicate to it.
Yeah, and I guess, so the other clarification I'm wondering is if, you know, if this was top priority across all the communities that you serve, but there's no additional resources in terms of staffing, would that 1.5 like change in any way, or is it pretty fixed just based on all the other aspects that are being addressed?
Well, I think there's going to be an ask in the future for more resources, and that would be one of the primary areas that we could increase resources, but it would have to be the communities committing to providing more resources.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
that's-
definitely, yes.
okay, thank you.
Excellent. And I don't see any other questions at this point for clarification. Now, Councillor Cole Hamilton said he might have some further questions, but I think we might be, are we ready to move on or? Okay, so Councillor Jolicoeur, you might, since I'll maybe let you speak next, since this will be your first time speaking.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor, and nice to see you, gentlemen. Curiosity around, is there any, and we get the quarterly reports, of course, from your team. Have we given any thought around any reporting out on previous year's priorities around any success stories? Or I know it kind of comes anecdotally when you come to us every quarter with the quarterly reports on the crime stats, but wondering if there's any kind of indication with other detachments around ways to report out on the specific priorities, whether it's an annual report or otherwise.
Not a really structured approach. I'd like to see a bit more structure to that, and potentially during the quarterly presentations would be a great time to highlight any specific, successes, because there are a lot of them, and we probably don't do a good enough job of communicating those.
We do update internally, quarterly, on our fiscal year. So I don't see an issue with reporting back on how we're progressing on those initiatives.
Like share that, the report you're
Exactly.
already doing with us, yeah.
Yep.
And I had actually written down when we got to the next part, even on this, when we get a report like this, even an up arrow or down arrow or some kind of emoji, so to speak, to sort of say it's getting better, it's getting worse, et cetera, just as a quick litmus test. But yeah, thanks, Councillor.
Like I had mentioned, like I had mentioned, typically when we choose the measure, so again, using an example, we choose, if you guys so choose, road safety as a priority. Well, how are we going to measure if we're doing a good job in road safety? One of those things may be, decrease injury collisions by 5%. It's always desirable to have something that is measurable, right? So you know how you're doing, and that's something that we can easily track, right? Or it could be increase impaired interdiction by 5%, something like that, and then we can report on that, and that's very easy to manage and report back on.
Excellent. Did you have a follow-up at all? That was it? Okay. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. Just a couple of observations. The priorities are 1 to 5, but I'm guessing that doesn't necessarily mean that 1 is the most important. So I wouldn't rank these in orders of importance. I would say that if we want to identify 5 or 6 priorities, I would give them relatively equal value. But the first one that I would start off with would be violent crime. And I would include in violent crime, violence in relationships, sexual assaults, other assaults of behavior. And I would also include drug trafficking, because I know that a lot of that involves organized crime, which I think has been something that you've listed in the past, but isn't on the list this time. And I know that there's some pretty nasty people involved in that. So anyway, I would group things together in that sort of a way. That's just my observation, and I would have police response to violent crime as pretty high on my list. And I could go on from there, but I got a few other ideas about how I would group these things, but I'll leave it at that for the moment. Thanks.
And Councillor Hillian, and I may be mishearing it. So there's one, again, it's a bit of a reactive thing that if you get the call, but part of this is that proactive side of things. So I don't know if you need that as well, or you're good with it.
No, like I said, whatever the community feels as a top priority, and then we will, come up with initiatives and how to address that priority.
Excellent.
That are meaningful and measurable.
Yeah, okay. Thanks, Councillor Hillian for that, and Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thanks, Mayor. It just, I agree with Councillor Hillian in terms of the numbering. We might not want to number them or be clear that they're not numbered as a priority, but I just pulled up the annual report from 2023. I don't think we got Q1 for 2024 yet, did we?
No.
Yeah. So the year over year largest increase outside of traffic, which I think one of the traffic ones was like 350% increase, that I've asked questions before, and you've provided a lot of context, which I think was helpful to understand, that I'd like to see here. Again, given the impact that it has on people's lives, is extortion, 136% increase. And that would be one that I would like to see. It's not on, I don't think, previous years, but it is increasing year over year and was a large increase in this past year. Thanks, Mayor.
Yeah, so I think we addressed that in previous meetings. That is, I'm going to say that your traditional extortion, you give me money or else I will do this to you, you give me this or I'll do that. This is more of the online type of sextortion, to use the colloquial term, or those sorts of fraud scams. And that's how they're coded, right? So that's why, without a doubt, why that increase is there. And people are now more live than reporting it to us because they realize it's a scam, right?
And the strategies around that might look like something like more proactive education along that, particularly with the youth, because it's a really big problem with youth and the sort of the sextortion offenses that we're seeing, plus increasing our ability to investigate those offenses because their electronic devices very time consuming and expensive, and it's a high level of expertise that's needed to deal with those investigations. So I think, there's activities around there we could design in.
Thanks, Councillor Jolicoeur, and Councillor McCollum.
Thanks. I was going to weigh in with my priorities, but then I want to pick up on this as well. I've read recently that young men are impacted much more at a much higher percentage than women for these type of crimes. Is that reflective of what we've seen locally, or? And then I see some nodding, so.
Yeah, I can't say. I see both sexes are impacted. I'm not sure of the proportions.
And I guess my other question around that is whether or not any work is happening now or is planned for getting into the school system and providing some tools in how to avoid it and what to do and that type of thing, minimizing the impacts of these types of interactions.
Yeah, our school liaison did some presentations last year on this topic in conjunction with the school district, essentially on education around, distribution of intimate images, just possession of them and these types of scams, right? Yeah. So it has been addressed, but could be more work done on it as well, right?
Yeah, or I mean, especially while it's kind of an increasing trend, is maybe just as part of regular engagement with youth, is doing the education piece on this one. Yeah, and then in terms of priority, for me, road safety would definitely remain high on that list. And just hearing about the changes that are coming into the Motor Vehicle Act around passing of cyclists, and that's like a major education piece, and maybe some shift in driver culture that perhaps that change is supported by, the outreach, not necessarily ticketing, but warning and that kind of thing, just really helping the public get on board with that expectation. To kind of zero in on one of the things around road safety. And yeah, I think I'll leave the road safety there. And then I would agree with the comments that Councillor Hillian made around violence and drug trafficking kind of fitting under one category. That makes sense to me, and that's certainly a big priority for community safety. And then just the continued work on mental health and awareness and support for, community members that are impacted by that, but also RCMP, engagement with those communities or those people in our community that they continue to have training and supports in addressing that. And I think I'll leave it at that.
Right, thanks, Councillor McCollum. That all makes good sense.
Yeah, very much so. On the mental health side, especially, I think we were talking with Jeff at our meeting earlier today about resources. And if we had more, I think having the mental health combined with interior health, or not interior health, that's my last name, island health workers, so we can push, some of these mental health calls out of a police call. I think if we had resources to do that, it would be very good in developing that program locally.
Excellent. And then again, we have the ability, as we're advocating here with the RCMP, we can have those kind of conversations with Island Health as well, if that's of any assistance. So with that, Councillor Moore.
Great, thank you, Mayor. I wanted to know when Councillor Jolicoeur brought up the extortion, my understanding was that it was a fairly low number, but of course, if you have one incident and then it goes up 200%, that's 2 incidents, and not to minimize it, but there may be other areas that, had 50 incidents last year and they've gone up, 200%. So now that's it's just got more magnitude. So I don't know, I believe that was what had happened with some of those numbers, that it was a relatively low number, but it had doubled because is that correct?
Yeah, no, for that one, I don't have the statistics in front of me, but I think for the extortions, which mainly are the ones that Troy talked about with the online frauds and then the sextortion incidents, those are up and the numbers are quite a bit.
Oh, okay.
Some of the
Maybe I'm thinking of a couple years
violence-related
ago.
extortions, I think are lower.
Okay.
Yeah.
And I guess, I agree with Councillor Hillian around, I don't know how that works for you in terms of lumping together the violent crimes, but it makes sense to me to put them under, one category. And I guess I wanted to speak to the bylaws homeless encampments, because of course we're trying to avoid criminalizing people for being homeless. And my understanding is when you're called out to those, it's because there is a serious incident happening. So I guess my concern is having it as a category makes it seem like there's a lot of like it's a huge issue around violence in encampments or something like that. And I think that would be better under that more broad heading. But my priorities would be similar: road safety, violent crimes, the property crime for sure, because we definitely hear about that. And if we go by what we hear about, I think it's that perception of, safety. And so I think that the foot patrols and all of that can be really helpful. And just whenever you're able to get into the community, and I know I worked with youth for many years, and there were sometimes incidents that happened that involved, almost a whole school population being impacted, and members would come out and do some presentations with youth and about, their rights and responsibilities and all of that. And I felt that it was quite impactful. So I think being able to continue that work is really important. I'll leave it at that for now. Thanks. Oh, I guess just clarification on the homeless encampment comment that I made, that you generally would go to those encampments if there was a serious incident going on, like you're not just arresting people.
No, it's a bylaw issue, and when we're there, typically it's to support bylaws.
Yeah.
Unless there's some kind of an assault that's happened or some kind of a criminal code
A
offense.
threat or something like that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Morin. And Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I agree with having road safety and property crime maintained as priorities. I think property crime is, we often underestimate, we think of minor crimes, but a lot of property crime has a significant impact on people who are affected by it. But the category that I would include that would be relatively broad would be number 3, which is liaison with residents and community. And I would include in that quite a number of these other items that basically do involve engagement with community. And I would include the work with our bylaw staff. I would include collaboration with emergency planning, which is items 11 and 12. And I would include mental health awareness and support in the downtown police presence. I see all those as aspects of community engagement. So, I mean, this is just the way I think. I think you try and address as many issues as possible within these types of categories, rather than say we're going to spend more time on this than that.
I
And
think
then
we could even include those under police visibility.
Yeah.
And have that as a.
Yeah, I mean, that would make sense to me, because I think that the engagement between the police and the community, which basically all these are different aspects of, is a really vital part of your work. And it's what gives people the confidence that there is a police presence, and also the relationship that is built, which has all sorts of benefits. The other thing, though, that I wouldn't want us to lose sight of, there's 2 items on here that relate to Comox First Nation. And I know that Comox First Nation is moving towards treaty. And one of their issues is, in fact, how do they enforce their laws? And of course, there's negotiations going on in relation to that at different levels. But I would hope that we could also give priority to your engagement with the Comox Nation in terms of working with them in relation to their laws, and supporting them through enhanced communication, so that they have that sense that they do get priority service from the police, given.
We have been involved with them through,
Yes.
from the very start of their process.
Heavily involved, yeah.
Yeah, that's great to know. And just from my own personal experience, there's been huge progress in the relationship between the Indigenous community and the police over the years that I've been here. It was open warfare when I first came here 45 years ago. I think that the resurgence of the Comox people and their growing autonomy and strength of community has contributed to that, but also the improved relationship with the police. And we know that not necessarily local members, but Indigenous people in general are vastly overrepresented in our system. So I think we want to do what we can to work in that direction. So I appreciate that you're doing that. Thanks.
Excellent. Thanks for that. And I was going to actually ask Councillor Cole Hamilton if he had a question before I let you speak again, and then his hand went up almost a second after, but I'm going to pass it over to Councillor Cole Hamilton.
Yeah. Thanks, Mayor. Not a problem at all. And I have to say, like, I don't disagree with any of what I've heard from my colleagues. I mean, those are all important priorities. So my only question, I guess, at this point would be to the office is the direction that we've given sufficiently clear? I think we've spoken to a number of important, and then grouping them helps to sort of get closer to that sort of focus that you need from us. But have you heard in this the priorities that you need?
And just so you know, Councillor Coleman, I've just thrown it on, actually, Ms. O'Connell's just thrown it onto the last slide. So this is an opportunity for us to actually put this into a motion, if that's what you were wanting.
Okay. No, I was just curious. Yeah, curious as to whether we're actually going to boil it down to the 5 that go into that recommendation, or whether we're going to go with, I guess, some themes that were referred to. But yeah, I guess we're getting to that point, so thank you. Have any of the ones that we mentioned so far been, anyway, do we just begin sort of listing them, the ones that have been stated? Like I would say road safety, and I would say violent crime as described by Councillor Hillian, and I think we talked about, anyway, I'll let others sort of group into clusters, the sort of the others, but those were two that.
I think you muted yourself there. I really appreciate your feedback. But Ms. O'Connell has been taking Jedi-like notes to make sure that she's capturing some of this information that she'll be able to share with us so that we can make sure that it reflects what we think and get that feedback. But if you had some thoughts.
Yeah, from my perspective, we're on the right track for sure. And Councillor Hillian put it very well in terms of harmonizing some of these commonalities and identifying some more honed in priorities.
Excellent. And yeah, I mean, I just maybe just to move on to that next step, then if there's no further comments, because I think we've gone through sort of the meat of the conversation now, and we can maybe have Evan had extortion, or Councillor Jolicoeur, I believe you. Okay. All right, Councillor Morin.
Yeah, I'm not gonna make a motion, but I guess what I heard reflected was by most people was road safety, violent crimes, community liaison, which would include downtown presence and all those other things, property crime, and then community relations with Comox First Nation. So I don't know if there's any agreement with that or any other comments, but.
Right. If you're able to just share that, then. Oh, okay. If you want to.
So the ones that I've got for road safety, I had Councillor McCollum, Councillor Morin, Councillor Hillian, Councillor Cole Hamilton. Violent crime, Councillor Morin, Councillor McCollum, and Councillor Cole Hamilton. Mental health and awareness, Councillor Morin, Councillor McCollum. Nope, not okay. Property crime, Councillor McCollum, Councillor Morin, and Councillor Hillian. Foot patrols, Councillor Morin. A liaison with residents and community, which could also include emergency planning, mental health, downtown police presence bylaw under a potential umbrella of police visibility. Councillor Hillian. Increasing communication support with KFN, Councillor Hillian, and extortion, Councillor Jolicoeur.
Yeah, thanks. Just to clarify the extortion, I think in referring back to the reports we get quarterly, looks like it falls under violent crime. So I would think that if we had violent crime, that extortion would be captured under violent crime. Is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. And then I'm in favor of the property crime, community engagement and visibility, KFN, and road safety.
We could also categorize that under police community relations.
Great. Yeah, thanks.
Okay, Councillor Hillian.
Well, if it helps, I could make a proposal here that, so if you want it in the form of this recommendation, then the first priority I would put as violent crime, and that would include items 8, 9, and 10. And again, these are not in order of priority. These are just the 5 things that we've got a consensus on.
Understood.
And in previous years, we've actually taken the numbers out and replaced them with bullets. And these.
I'm just saying the numbers so that, like I'm assuming that our clerk might write the actual names that correspond with the numbers on the list.
Mhm.
Just for ease, does that help? And then, so the second one would be property crime. And I don't see any other items on the list that fit in there. Third, road safety. And I don't know that we're distinguishing between off-road vehicles and, regular road safety. So that's 1 and 6. And then the next one is, what did you just call it? Police,
Community relations.
police community relations. And that would include items 3, 11, 12, 15, and 16. And then the fifth one would be police community relations with Comox First Nation, items 13 and 14. Well,
I think that would just fall under that last priority, police community relations. We will have that as well.
yeah, I'm sure you will, yeah. But
Just
Yes,
for,
the ones I would leave out, and this is just me, I don't know how others feel, but I wouldn't put a lot of time into safety around watercrafts and parks and campgrounds. Not that they're not important, but I just wouldn't rank them as the same amount of priority in relation to the rest of the list. But although I know you're going to be going over to Hornby Island and spending a lot of time dealing with stuff there. Thanks.
And town of Comox and.
well, this is your priority, so it's what you think, so.
Thanks very much for articulating that, Councillor Hillian. It is much appreciated. And again, they are bulleted, so they're not necessarily, again, priority 1 through priority 5. But again, I think that's in keeping with what we've done historically. Are there any further questions and comments on this motion as presented before we take the vote? Yeah, if there's a grammatical error, increase community relations. Oh, police, not policy. Fair enough. Because on here it's police / community relations. So,
You've kind of been renaming them.
yes.
Do you want to do a slash or?
Well, I mean, the thing is like, with all due respect, the only thing that jumps out at me is if we called it, reconciliation or something that actually on here makes it, I think, a little bit more articulated that this is something we're doing with Comox First Nations or First Nations in general. And then, so if we call it, it's reconciliation, Councillor McCollum might have it better articulated.
Yeah, I'm thinking either like expressing that we support the RCMP work in reconciliation with KFN, or we include that in the police community relations bullet, because otherwise it seems as though we're kind of directing something that maybe is a little bit outside of us. So I would just choose the words to certainly include reconciliation and yeah.
It was support reconciliation with KFN.
Yeah.
Like, does that kind of
Yes.
capture?
Support policy. and activities. I see Will's got he's gonna
Oh,
It
Will's
was
got his
some-
hand up.
context.
All right. Maybe we'll let Councillor Cole Hamilton jump in, and I do also have Councillor Hillian light on, but Councillor Cole Hamilton, your thoughts. You're muted, but it doesn't say you're muted. It's very strange.
No.
But we
Can you
can
hear me?
hear it. Now we can. Yes, now we can.
Perfect. Fantastic. Okay. I was just suggesting that we make it somewhat broader than KFN, because as we know, the overwhelming majority of Indigenous people in our community are off-reserve individuals. And I'm just wondering if reconciliation with Indigenous community members and KFN, is that appropriate language?
So would it just be what Kate has, Ms. O'Connell's just written, and then just deleting the last bit of that? So support.
That does align more closely with our
Indigenous
national priorities.
communities. Yeah.
I'll add.
Okay, great.
So we just got rid of efforts and. Spell check's trying to get you. Efforts has got an extra R.
Right.
I'm not too sure either, actually.
I'm not sure I understand why the word efforts is there. Support.
Yeah. And we can probably get rid of the with. Just to get it all in one line. And I don't think we,
Yep.
and so there we go.
And there's a final there as well. Great.
So that looks good, and I still have a couple lights on. Thank you, Councillor Cole Hamilton, for your input. Councillor Hillian.
Thanks, Mayor. I realize we're all wordsmithing together here, and I think that's great. Given that we've only got one item on the agenda today. I just wanted to speak to why I see it as important that reconciliation and work with Comox First Nation is a separate item rather than lumped in with general police community relations. It's because, in my view, that's how Comox sees it. They don't see themselves as another community group with whom it's important to liaise with. They see themselves as a distinct nation, distinct government, and I think that by identifying this as a separate item, we acknowledge that that is in fact how they see themselves. Thanks.
Much appreciated. I appreciate your articulating that. And Councillor Moore.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I completely agree with that. Yeah, and I think we're actually wordsmithing quite well together, but we do only have one item. I'm not sure if RCMP needs to be in there because these are RCMP priorities, like it sounds like reconciliation belongs to the RCMP, and I think it should just be reconciliation without the RCMP.
I'm seeing some thumbs up.
Further wordsmithing, sort of use our vernacular, would probably be something along the lines of enhancing service delivery to Indigenous communities.
It was hard to hear. So maybe right.
Sorry, that using sort of our terminology or vernacular would be something along the lines of enhancing service delivery to Indigenous communities.
And I'm not sure. I think this might what's on here might resonate with council a little bit more, just with the jargon that we use.
That's fine.
I'm looking around for nods in either way. Councillor Hillian.
I wouldn't see any problem with support reconciliation with an enhanced service delivery to Indigenous communities in KFN. I think that makes sense. Those are communities that historically feel they have been underserviced. Mm-hmm. So enhanced service delivery, I think we would support that 100%.
Okay, so support reconciliation and enhanced service.
No, reconciliation with and enhanced service delivery to Indigenous communities in KFN. And the second with would be removed.
All right. I see another light on. So now we're getting into the nooks and crannies here. Councillors,
thanks, Mayor. I'm not wordsmithing this. I just want to add Councillor Hillian, his comments around underservice. I think we also know from our crime data that Indigenous peoples are also over serviced by policing services across the country. And so I do actually like the word enhanced, because enhanced for me encompasses both, in addition to quantity of services, but also the quality of that service through the good work that our CMP officers are doing around cultural safety, for example, and trauma-informed practice. So I just want to share my support for the word enhanced, because to me, it's not just the quantity, but it's also the quality of that service. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much. And I'm not seeing any of the lights or nods or waving hands. So that being said, I'll call the vote. All those in favor of the motion in front. Oh. Okay, sure. Okay. All right. We've redone it. We're good. Excellent. Thanks so much. So that being said, we have the motion in front of us. All those in favor? Any opposed? And that passes unanimously. Thanks so much. And before we finish, one of the other things, do you want to speak to it? Do you want me to speak to it? I'm happy to speak to it. Just in discussion with staff, it might be useful for us to have a subsequent motion just regarding the that quarterly report that you said that you already do, just that our council could have a motion that says that that's something that we're requesting, and then it goes on our books so that our staff have that on their list to make sure that that happens as well. Does that make sense, Mr. Garvin?
I think, Mr. Mayor, to go to Staff Sergeant Beauregard's comment, what I heard was at the end of their fiscal quarter, they have an annual report. And I think what council, if I'm channeling what council was talking about, is that it would be possible to have kind of an overview annual report as part of the final quarterly, the fiscal quarterly report. Now I've gummed up what you were actually making a motion on. Just to clarify, it would be an annual report coincident with the.
So we do update the annual performance plan, this document that we're dealing with, quarterly.
Yes.
So
And
each sort of measure initiative will have a stakeholder, an owner, and they sort of ensure that it's being addressed, and then we report on that. So we could, when we do the quarterly reports, report on the APP status, where we're at, and then include it in the final report as well.
Yes, it's essentially every action item under an activity that we identify is reported on internally quarterly as well, so we could share that.
yeah, because it sounded like, yeah, you'd just be sharing a report that already exists.
That's right.
But then there was also maybe at the end of the year, sort of here's how we did last year. So that if we have this meeting every year, which maybe we do, then we can have that information for this meeting so that we can update and adjust our priorities for the next year. If that makes sense. That's what I heard. Councillor Moran.
Great, thanks, Mayor. This isn't related to the recommendation, but I just wanted to provide a bit of feedback and around communications, and I'm not sure how it works there, but I've heard that the website, the RCMP website, isn't great in terms of like all this great information that you get to us isn't always posted for the public. And I know that on our website, we've linked some of your reports because we get these questions, and we pass on the report, but people say, oh, it'd be great if the RCMP actually had a lot of this information on the website. I say this with the knowing that our website is not great either, and it's a big priority for us over the next year to make our website better. But I don't know if you have any influence on just providing a bit more information and more specific information on the website, but that's some feedback that I've heard from the public. Thanks. I've heard that Nanaimo's website is actually pretty good, so I don't know if I haven't looked at Nanaimo, so I don't know what they do differently, but.
We'll look at it. The Nanaimo RCMP website? Oh, we'll look at it.
Fantastic. And just while this is being typed out on the screen, I'll maybe take the opportunity just to really acknowledge, especially on that communication side. I've really seen that, especially over the last year or two, as we came out of COVID, there was a lot of challenges And really just want to appreciate the RCMP being at community gatherings and doing a lot of work with business owners and the community. That's been, I think, a great partnership with the city. And it's, I think, been extremely well received. Things like the new group of RCMP folks that are doing the foot patrols is as a result of that. But really, I think without having the RCMP as part of those conversations, we probably wouldn't have the foot patrols in its current form the way that it is. So I just really want to articulate that that it has been a great partnership, I think, and certainly something that we can move forward on. And with that, I think the typing is done on this. So, and if there's any errors or omissions on here, if you want to look at that, and otherwise, if somebody can make a motion. All right, it's been moved and seconded. And any further questions or comments? Seeing none, all those in favor and any opposed, and that passes unanimously. So, all right, so we've got those two motions done. I don't believe there's anything else on our docket except for termination, and we are terminated.
Am I able to add an update for council regarding our new detachment commander?
Oh, yes.